What's up guys, Ruppy here, and welcome to my team builder video for week 4 of the A-Drive Army Battle League, where my 3-0 Columbus Swoo will hope to extend our record to 4-0 as we face the 1-2 Minnesota Vikavolts. And for the record, I want to point something out really quick. When I say Minnesota Vikavolts, I am not talking about A-Drive, as disappointing as that sounds. While Dan has participated in his own subscribers league in the past, he did not this year because of time constraints. I think I might have said that in a previous video, but I just wanted to confirm it because this team is actually coached by a guy by the name of Colin. So I believe he picked the name Minnesota Vikavolts before it was actually revealed that that was going to be Dan's NPA team. So that's kind of why. It's kind of a funny little scenario there. What isn't funny, however, is his team. Now, you might think, why does he only have a 1-2 record with that team off to the side? Well, I mean, I can't judge the guy based on how he's played some of his other games, but this was, I know I said last week was a difficult team build for me. This was even tougher because basically on paper, for the most part, what I'm looking at is, for all intents and purposes, a complete and absolute counter to my team. And that fact bothers the hell out of me. So, he has a Manaphy for his tier 1 pick. I have a very bad track record when it comes to facing Manaphy. Obviously, it can Tail Glow, get up to +3, and just try to run through everything. It has Calm Mind, so it can also boost its defenses as well. In the rain, it has Hydration, which makes it impervious to status effects, basically, and it can use that to abuse being able to rest and then immediately wake up, which is a set that has given me a lot of trouble in the past, admittedly. So, I am very terrified of seeing Manaphy on the other end, especially considering that I do have somewhat of a rain team at my disposal. I am not bringing rain this week. I am going to make that clear right now. I opted against bringing rain just because he has a lot of things that could turn it against me, and I would prefer not to go that route. Next up is Ferrothorn, which for my particular team for this league is actually kind of a pain, because I don't have a lot of things that can actually do something to it. I know I've got Mind Shout, which could wipe it out with a high jump kick, but I know in his game last week when he happened to face the Mistral Blimps, the other rain team, funny how I keep getting the being the second rain team to play a team for the second straight week. At least it allows me to kind of spy on it and gauge some ideas on what does and doesn't work. But anyway, I know last week he actually ran Choppleberry Ferrothorn, anticipating a fighting move to hit that thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if he pulled the same thing this week. Alternatively, I would not be surprised if he actually ran an Occaberry on it. But Ferrothorn is just a pain in general. It has access to 2 different kinds of hazards, both of which are going to bother me to no end, no doubt, and I would very much prefer if they stayed off my side of the field, but that's easier said than done. As far as hazard removal goes, he has a Crobat there. Obviously it takes a nice chunk from Stealth Rocks, but Crobat's not a bad mon. I mean, it's got some nice offensive power. He can run a Bandage set and try to mow me down with Brave Birds, which would be terrifying. Or Brave Bats, I guess. I don't think it's access to Heat Wave, but I really don't think it's going to be that big of a bother against my team specifically. If he brings it and runs Super Fang on it, that could be a problem, because that is definitely counterintuitive to my plan, but I really have no way of stopping him from doing it, unfortunately. So I may just have to see how that one just ultimately plays out. Nidoqueen is kind of the other half of his hazard core, and if he brings both Ferrothorn and Nidoqueen, I am going to have a very rough time on my hands. Nidoqueen has some nice defenses. It is the more defensive Nido. And it obviously also gets Sheer Force. I don't know if he'll run a more offensive variant. I know it gets Stealth Rocks. It can also set up Toxic Spikes, which I don't think a lot of members of my team that I'm bringing this week are actually hindered by Toxic Spikes now that I think about it. So that might not be too big of an issue. But Nidoqueen in general could cause me some problems if I don't find a way to get rid of it almost immediately. Seismitoad is surprisingly one of his bigger threats. Maybe not as much to my team, depending on the scenario, but he has put in some surprising work with it in past weeks. Mostly, the thing with Seismitoad, for me, it is another Stealth Rock setter, which is a bit problematic, potentially, depending on what he does and doesn't bring. But I know the thing really can't stand up to Mega Venusaur, but against a lot of my other mons, it could cause me a few issues. Basically, it all depends on the set he's running. If he's running an offensive Swift Swim set expecting me to bring Rain, he's going to be sorely disappointed unless he happens to bring Rain himself, which would kind of be a risky play considering I do have mods that thrive in the rain. If he's a bulkier Water Absorb set, that would be a little easier to manage to some degree. So it basically all boils down to, if he brings it, I need to see what set it's running. Magneton, I'm not as worried about it. I mean, it'll trap Jirachi, which isn't actually a big deal because Jirachi can actually handle it. He can run at Specs, he can run at Scarf. He could run an Eviolite for all I know, and opt to actually go Magnet Pull as opposed to Sturdy, but I think he's more likely going to end up running Sturdy just because I have some heavy hitters on my team, and he would need to be able to live a guaranteed hit, potentially. I really don't think Magneton's going to be doing much, but if he expects me to bring a Rain team, he might bring it. Though he does have a somewhat better electric type on his team to contend with that. Dusclops is probably going to be the biggest pain I'm going to have to deal with, because Dusclops with Eviolite, it just doesn't like to die, and that's obviously a problem. I know the thing does get access to Pain Split as well, which could be a bit of a hindrance in trying to keep some of my mons in good health while wearing this thing down. Basically, Dusclops is just going to be how well can I break it down as the game goes on. His Mega is Ampharos, which I know Mega Ampharos is fairly slow, but look at some of the things Lord Envy managed to pull off of it last season. Mega Ampharos has the potential to be terrifying to my team because Mold Breaker means that both of my Volt Absorb mons, Jolteon and Lantern, cannot actually be immune to its electric type attacks, and it does have a pretty powerful Thunderbolt it could throw my way. Dragon Pulse could be an issue against my dragons, obviously. Mega Ampharos just has a lot of powerful options that I would really prefer not to deal with, but here I am having to contend with it. He also has Greninja, which, according to the league rules, has to be Torrent Greninja, in the interest of fairness. But even still, despite even being saddled with Torrent, Greninja's still very fast. It's got the potential to hit pretty hard. I'm not expecting Greninja to really be as big of a threat with how I prepare my team, but it all depends on the moves he actually brings, and that's really going to be the difference maker. Sylveon is another annoyance. Not as much as Dusclops, but it's kind of close. Just because, really, Sylveon is kind of a blockade to the plan I want to try to run this week. Basically, if Sylveon goes down, then my plan is a really good forward, has a really good chance of going off without a hitch. But that's one blockade I need removed first. If he runs a Choice Spec set, that could be very problematic for me. I'm more expecting him, if he brings it, to run a more, Cleric set, perhaps? But I don't know. He might not think he would need Cleric against my team, which he would be sorely surprised in that case. But I know a few weeks ago there was the issue of the Florges I thought was a Cleric, and ultimately ended up actually packing Psyshock on it. And I know for a fact Sylveon gets Psyshock, so that could be a problem I need to keep my eyes peeled for. Delphox, he might bring it just because of Mega Venusaur. He might not. It's hard to say. It could be a decent Choice Scarfer, The fact that it's a psychic type, to some degree, makes my job a little difficult, unless I can deduce that, yes, it is Scarf, and what move it's locked into. That would be the best way I could manage it. But beyond that, Delphox, part of me feels like he isn't going to bring it, but part of me feels like he would, just because it does have some potential against my team. Emboar is probably the biggest threat he has against me, believe it or not. I know Manaphy kind of seems that way, and Dusclops and Sylveon are very potentially annoying walls, but considering most of his biggest threats are special attackers, if he brings a Scarf Emboar, and I'm not set up to get it taken care of in advance, that could be potentially problematic. A Banded Emboar could be even worse. I do have some Mons that would be able to take a hit from it, or at least outspeed it and get rid of it. But if he's really worried about me bringing Rain, then Emboar might not surface. But Emboar is the biggest problem my team has to face, because Scarfed or Banded, if he's running Reckless and Flare Blitz, then he actually has a chance to pretty much run through just about everything on my entire team with it. And I'm not just talking about the 6 Mons I ended up bringing, I'm talking literally my entire roster. Emboar is just a pain. But I think I've worked out a tactic that might actually pull this off. So we're going to see how it ends up playing out. And it's all going to begin with the AABL debut of my newest acquisition, Claydol. Fun fact, its nickname, Emeth, is the Hebrew word for truth. And in olden times, when there were people who made clay golem statues, it was believed that the word Emeth was the word necessary to be able to actually bring these golems to life. And since Claydol kind of is a a clay golem of sorts, not the actual Pokemon golem, but you get what I'm talking about, I think the name kind of fits. It's actually a pretty clever name. I actually have to thank Soul Eater for pointing me in that direction. Anyway, and let's get off anime talk and let's get on to Claydol's set. So, you might find it curious that I'm actually bringing Claydol to this game, considering, you know, he has 3 water types and a Ferrothorn that I cannot touch. But I'm actually confident in what I think Claydol could potentially do here. I'm running a leftover set and I'm going full max HP, max special defense with a calm nature. The set is Toxic, Rapid Spin, Earth Power, and Psyshock. Honestly, Earth Power and Psyshock are really there just to try to dent things. With only 4 special attack EVs and Claydol only having base 70 special attack as it is, it's not necessarily going to be annihilating things, crits or potential crits aside, but it actually still does a pretty nice chunk to a lot of his team. But Claydol really serves 2 purposes to this game. Well, 3 actually. Number 1, being a potentially good wall against a lot of his special attackers. Believe it or not, even against the water types, I can actually tank a fair amount of water type hits and be able to do something in return, as long as, at least in Manaphy's case, it's not boosted. And in Greninja's case, if it's special and not physical. But the true main roles Claydol serves here lie in its other 2 moves. Toxic is going to be key for me in wearing his team down, because not only is it my best way to grind Dusclops down to a manageable point, and potentially even the Seismitoad if he goes a more defensive route, but if he brings Sylveon, it also kind of forces Sylveon to have to find a turn to come in and heal all the damage off if he's running a Cleric set, just because of the fact that he obviously wouldn't want walls like that Toxic against my team, which really can help me put myself in a good position to gauge and contend with Sylveon in that case. The other move, Rapid Spin, basically is my answer to probably the biggest way I lose this game, and that's Hazard Control. If you look at his team, he only has 1 form of Hazard Control, and its name is Crobat. Crobat does not like rocks, and even though they aren't on Emeth here, Claydol I do have rocks on this team. So, but I'll get more into that later. Basically, if I can find an opening to get Claydol in and keep Stealth Rocks, Spikes, Toxic Spikes I'm not as worried about because I could just bring in Venusaur to absorb those, but the other two, if I can eliminate his hazard setters or get them in a position where hazard setting is not the smartest idea, and then basically keep hazards off my side of the field, that's going to be my best chance to win this game. The way he really kind of wore down the league's other dedicated rain team last week was basically hazard stacking. And I cannot fall victim to the same tactic this week. I do have a few mons that Spiked wouldn't necessarily bother. Well, really only 2, and they're the first 2 mons you're seeing right now. But even still, I don't want hazards kind of ruining my day. For my next mon, I'm going to give Jasper another shot here. Jasper was the mon I pegged to be my ace for my week 1 game, and then ultimately it didn't even get a chance to come into the game, which is kinda sad. But Jasper could put in a lot of work here, I feel. So with multi-scale, max speed, and max attack running a Jolly Nature, Jasper has a really good chance to be able to come in, tank a hit, set up, and then proceed to start running Rough Shot over everything. Fire Punch is obviously there, so I've got something to hit the Ferrothorn with, as well as the Magneton. Thunder Punch is for Greninja, but more so for Manaphy. Especially with the Electrium Z, because at +1, Gigavolt Havoc will completely decimate Manaphy. If he's actually running less physical attack or physical defense, then I might not even need the boost, but that's kind of assuming a lot. Basically, +1 and fire off a Gigavolt Havoc would be the best chance I have to completely eradicate Manaphy from the field. Thunder Punch in general is also a good way of dealing with Crobat too. I almost forgot about that thing. Now, you might be curious as to why I'm running Outrage, considering a Sylveon does exist on his team. That's where my one-mentioned plan of dealing with Sylveon comes into play, by trying to get rid of that thing as soon as possible if he brings it. Because once Sylveon is gone, even at +1, there are very few things on his team that can live in Outrage from Jasper. Probably the only 2 mons off the top of my head, actually more like, well, there are a few things that could live it. Ferrothorn could live it, but it's not living a Fire Punch. If he runs a more physically defensive Seismitoad, it might have a chance to live it. Dusclops definitely lives it, but it's not going to appreciate taking it. And depending on how he EVs it, even Nidoqueen might be able to take it. But basically, that's a huge way of breaking down his walls, especially if he tries to switch them in, and they basically get dented and then finished off the next turn. So that's basically Jasper's main purpose. Set up. But Jasper's basically one of my 2 dedicated late game cleaners once Sylveon is out of the picture and all of his walls are grinded down quite a bit. And I think Jasper really does have the potential to put in a lot of work this game because of that. Next up, we have Herbivore, and I was very heavily considering not bringing Herbivore to this game because he does have a multitude of mons that could cause me a few problems. Even with Thick Fat, Emboard hits me stupidly hard with Reckless Flare Blitzes. And I know it does have the potential to get Zen Headbutt too, which is a problem. And even a Banded set, I think, outspeeds Mega Venusaur. Delphox running Psychic type attacks is obviously an issue. I know Greninja gets Extra Sensory. Sylveon, as I mentioned, gets Size Shock. Manaphy, I am almost positive that if he's gonna run any other attacks besides at least a Water move on that Manaphy, regardless of what it decides to pull, Psychic is going to be one of them, because otherwise he cannot touch Mega Venusaur. So, I'm almost guaranteeing that Manaphy is bringing Psychic. I did switch up the EVs a little bit. I know this is kind of my standard Herbivore set that I've been bringing every week. I know it's kind of, a little dull and boring, but it gets the job done, and I can't argue against it. Giga Drain, Sludge Bomb, Synthesis, and I decided to go with HP Fire this week, really just for the Steel types, more particularly Ferrothorn, so I'm not walled by that thing. But I did change up the EVs a little bit. The HP and speed EVs are the same, but I transferred 100 EVs from defense into special defense and made Herbivore calm nature this week. More so because that change allows me to live a lot of his special attacks, even psychic type attacks, a lot better. Especially from Mons that aren't actually psychic types. The only one he has in that category being Delphox. And since he does pack primarily special attackers by the look of things as far as his offensive threats go, Herbivore being able to sit in there, tank those hits, and just proceed to push forward, wearing things down, is, I think, going to help a lot. Ember might be a problem, but I do think even with 80 defense EVs, I'm still able to live even at 1 Banded Flare Blitz, provided I'm full health. It's not something I want to risk unless necessary to try to get some damage off on the thing, but it's an option I can at least keep in mind. Next up, yup, dun dun dun. I know, I'm no good at scare chords, my apologies. But yes, I decided to go ahead and bring Purple Rain to this game, except it's not planning on abusing Rain. Since I am not bringing Rain, if he wants to bring Rain, that's fine with him, but it doesn't change my plans one bit. Purple Rain is a crit draw this week. I know, you might think I'm kind of, taking from Lord Envy again, but I'm not running Substitute on this one. This is actually more of a standard-ish crit draw set. So obviously, I've got the scope lens and the sniper ability. I'm max special attack, max speed, and I'm modest to be able to get the most power out of this. Focus energy, Draco Meteor, Surf, and agility. This is basically my other cleaner slash punch holes in everything until they die mon. Because if I can find a prime opportunity, and a lot of his defensive walls do give me set opportunity, to be able to bring this thing in and get a focus energy set up, barring Sylveon, Dusclops, and I believe to some degree Ferrothorn, there is not a Mon on his team that can live a crit Draco Meteor. And honestly, the ones that, well, Dusclops kind of takes him relatively well, though it will get broken down just because of the Eviolite. Sylveon, it can actually take even a crit Surf relatively well, but if it's been dented a bit, and especially if he's going Spec Sylveon to try to really contend with my Mega Venusaur as opposed to a Cleric set, if I wear that thing down prior, then Purple Rain will be able to take it out with a crit Surf. Ferrothorn does definitely die to a couple of Dracos at least. I think I only need 2 to dent that thing, depending on how invested it is. Basically, the plan is wear everything down, and assuming Jasper hasn't already taken that mantle, bring Purple Rain in on a defensive Mon, set up a focus energy. Agility is really there just because, just to make sure Kingdra can outspeed anything he might have that's Scarf. Namely the Emboar, potentially the Delphox, depending on which one of those he might bring. I'm not expecting a Scarf Manaphy, that would be kind of ridiculous. Definitely Scarf Magneton. And then basically just abuse the crits. I know that's kind of unlike me, but like I said, I'm using the tools at my disposal to try to win this game, and I cannot deny the huge holes that Critera punches in his team. Well, it doesn't really punch holes, it just tears just about everything down pretty much. The reason I'm running Surf as opposed to Hydro Pump is mostly because of, a crit Surf will get the job done on most of his mons anyway. And I really didn't like the low accuracy of Hydro Pump when Surf can kind of, for the most part, do the job that I need it to do anyway. And the good thing about getting a focus energy up and basically having a 100% crit ratio thanks to the scope lens is the fact that Draco Meteor's special attack drops are basically null and void once I get that set up, which is going to be really nice in pretty much, as I said before, just destroying everything. Especially if my defensive mons grind him down a bit. Next up, also making its AABL debut this week, which means my entire roster will have had at least one game at this point, is Firestorm the Magmortar. Yes, that is a DC Comics reference. I mean, Magmortar kind of looks like Firestorm, depending on the incarnation we want to talk about. But anyway, the ability is Flame Body, though I'm not expecting it to really get much use. It's mostly just because I don't see any of his mons necessarily putting me to sleep. So, Vital Spirit kind of seems useless. And if he does happen to pull some surprise physical attacking shenanigans on me, Flame Body at least has a chance to burn something and make my life a little easier. But I'm basically running Magmortar as a Scarf Wall Breaker. I got max special attack, modest nature, max speed, and with a Scarf, I will actually outspeed a lot of things. I think the only thing I won't necessarily outspeed with this set would be if he runs a Scarf Delphox. Scarf Crobat makes absolutely no sense, and to some degree Scarf Greninja doesn't as well. Everything else, a Scarf basically allows me to outspeed it and fire off a massive hit on it. And that's the reason I brought Firestorm. Its coverage allows it to basically be a wall breaker, and the Scarf, as much as I would love to run Life Orb for the extra power, I need the Scarf to be able to make sure I outspeed a lot of certain things, to be able to punch giant holes in them. Fire Blast, aside from being a powerful stab attack, obviously doesn't dent, it destroys Ferrothorn and Magneton. Thunderbolt is there for Greninja and Manaphy, and I guess Crobat as well. Hidden Power Grass is obviously for the Seismitoad. And Psychic is for the likes of Emboar, well, mostly Emboar and Nidoqueen. Crobat, I guess, kind of as well. I mean, it might be a bit of an easy prediction once he finds out I'm Scarfed, because I'll be locked into whatever move I choose and unable to switch up my coverage. But I felt the Scarf was necessary just to be able to get in the licks I needed to get in. And even in general, Firestorm's power should hopefully be more than enough to be able to put dents in things, even on resisted hits, and be able to help wear everything down to set up for either Purple Rain or Jasper to come in and clean up. And last but not least, I am going to go ahead and bring Mabel this week. I was really hesitant to bring Mabel, and I was really considering either Jolteon or Lantern instead, but as much as I would have loved to have one of them, I didn't think it really worked out, considering Seismitoad kind of causes the both of them a few problems. Not to mention the fact that Mega Ampharos's Mold Breaker makes the point of running Volt Absorb kind of useless. That was basically another role Klato's going to kind of fill, to try to deal with Mega Ampharos's electric attacks, since it's immune to them. But Mabel, basically, I'm going with a more specially defensive Stealth Rock 3 attack set this week. You might find my choice of attacks a little odd, though, but it's basically coverage to try to dent everything. It's kind of the same role that Magmortar is serving. Zen Headbutt allows me a way to smash Emboar and Crobat, even though Emboar's case would really be more trying to catch the damn thing on the switch in. Fire Punch gives me a way of contending with Magneton and more so Ferrothorn. I guess Zen Headbutt kind of hits Nidoqueen too. I forgot about Nidoqueen. How do I forget about Nidoqueen? It's a problem, Nidoqueen. And Energy Ball is obviously for the Manaphy, the Greninja, and most of all, the Seismitoad. I'm actually running a Gentle Nature to actually have both my attack and special attack stats sitting at 236 uninvested. And the reason for that is because I wanted to make sure, I didn't want to just prioritize one offense over the other, and I wanted to make sure that Energy Ball could hit Seismitoad as hard as possible, because Energy Ball does have it, as long as I have those extra special attack EVs by lowering my defense instead through the Gentle Nature, Energy Ball has a really good chance of OHKOing Seismitoad if it comes in on Stealth Rocks, which would be very nice in trying to punch holes in his team and grind everything down. So that is my basic plan. I am a little iffy on it. I'm feeling a little nervous about it, because this is a really nasty team and one that definitely could cause me a lot of problems just on paper. But I managed to get through last week well enough. Even if this team looks worse, I think I can execute my game plan to perfection once again. But we're going to have to wait until the battle, which is actually happening in about 15 minutes from when I'm recording this. Talk about a rush job on getting recorded and everything. But I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys be so I can start getting prepared for that. So thank you guys so very much for watching. I have been Ruppy, and my Columbus Swoo and I will see you guys next time. Take care.